money is success for people. They think that's what it is. And the reality is, once you have it, you'll realize it doesn't buy happiness. It actually buys separation from others. It's kind of interesting because there's a lot of people that hoard it. And, if you go and sell your company or so, you're in a totally different mind space. And so I've spoken to so many people that have sold their businesses, gotten wealth from other sources or so, and it changes them because they think it's going to buy them happiness. And the reality is happiness is different for everybody. There's different aspects. So, we always get asked in Strategic Coach, who do you want to be a hero to? I want to be a hero to entrepreneurs. So that's my hero group. I want to be a hero to farmers. I want to share my observations on life. I don't want to say I have wisdom. I'm a great observer. And I used to say philosopher, but that's way too heady for me. It's more, I'm an observer of life because there's patterns to everything for me. And when I see it, I want to share it if it's relevant for others. So, I was born dead and I had an umbilical cord around my neck and they had to revive me. And it turned out my parents, I'm from an Italian and German family. Usually in the Italian tradition, you do it after Uncle Joey or Uncle Anthony or whatever. For me, I was named Stephen with a PH because Stephen Burgess is who delivered me. And they were so grateful. And so my beginning was traumatic. And I actually had gone through all sorts of waking up like I was in a foxhole into my adult years because of that exactly. And so I look at life differently. And I think a lot of us, so I'm an INFJ on the Myers-Briggs. I'm a 6.753 on the Colby. I'm an 8.5 on the print. I mean, for all the stuff that you guys like. I'm going to pull up one of my books here on the Strength Finders. If you want to know who I was, it's futuristic, activator, arranger, connectedness, and input. And the futuristic, I live in the future. Like literally, I walk around in the future and I'm always looking at how the world is impacting things and how could I take peanut butter and chocolate and make some kick-ass kind of good candy that didn't exist prior to us running into each other. So that's my DNA. And I do that over and over and over again in my life. And it's flow. You hear Stephen Kotler talks about flow. I think that our lives are a series of flow events. And when you try to back off of them or hang on to the rocks, that's where we get injured. And for me, there's a certain flow. You force your will on things, you're going to get hurt. But in creating a beautiful life, there's going to be opportunities and variety. I love variety. So I have all of these different projects that I'm working on. And everybody's like, don't you sleep? And I mean, I've gotten those conversations 100 times. Don't you sleep? How do you do so many things when I see you doing this? And I'm like, I have the exact same 24 hours a day as you. It's just how I choose to use them is different. So I have this term or phrase I use, which is I'm going into the luge. The luge, that ice sled that you go down. You're not going to be answering texts or being bothered by, somebody calling you from wherever. And so I go into luge pretty regularly. And that's where the really big things happen. How do I apply myself in a really meaningful way to something and then get it up to that 80%? And then I find my who's going to get the next 20% of the 8. Now I'm at 96%. Then I find another who is going to get the next 4% up to its 99 point, whatever, 6% at that point. And I do that over and over and over again. And I'm patient. I've got 15 Airstreams at my farm because I want to give people individual experiences. We work with some veterans, people who wanted a bougie place, wanted to have a bathroom in every room of a trailer or something. I'm like, no, that's not going to work. So rather than putting bathrooms in all my houses, I started buying Airstreams every day. I look at the Airstream market and I figure it out. I watch it go up and down. And so now we just built a Airstream with a cold plunge and a sauna in it. It's amazing, and it's made of the same wood that we're growing at the farm. And now I'm taking two of my units and I'm sending them up to the Amish, and they're going to be apparently I know that they have experience with aluminum, which is what Airstreams are made out of. And then they worked in the RV industry as well. And apparently they were some of the best skilled people. And they want to do these projects because I helped a friend of mine buy a boat company, and he builds this boat fishing pontoon. And he introduced me to these Amish people. And so, like, there's all these rabbit holes that I go down. But meanwhile, it starts with collecting one Airstream. Why did I collect an Airstream? Because now they're collectible. They'll actually make money. I don't want to lose money. I call that tuition, right? And so if I'm losing money on something, I think I don't feel stupid. I just don't do it again, or then I am stupid, right? And I just take it and spiral things up. And now we're doing a bunch of different retreats there. We're going to do a sleep retreat, an author's retreat, an art retreat. This is the coolest one lately. And it's a dog retreat, an owner and dog retreat, where we have professional owners come. I just learned about this thing, and I don't like the name of what it is, but you put bales of hay, and then you take, this is the part that I don't like, a rat, and you put it in a tube, right? And then you hide the tube inside the hay, and then the dog goes nuts and finds it and gets a prize or a cookie or whatever when they get it. But stuff like that, I like to create those things, but I can only get it to about 80%. And I'll whiteboard about it, and they go, okay, here it is. Now run with it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I enjoy the heck out of creating. And I think us as entrepreneurs, we're creators if we're not stuck behind the 8 ball of I have to make money today. And how am I going to do this? And where's the next dollar coming from? I'm blessed that I don't need to worry about that. And so I've created a life of fun, enjoyment, where time just passes by. I'll spend time with the most interesting people in the most intimate of settings, appropriate, of course. And I mean that from the perspective of, we talk about shit that they've never talked to anybody about when I sit there and I'll go through a whiteboarding session with them. And so I love to apply myself just like you do. I do that too, because I can give back to people. And my key gift is helping people attain exponential growth. How can they grow exponentially if they want to or not? Because the biggest battle we have is between our ears, right? So, what does Dan Sullivan say? He says, our confidence is the electricity to your appliance, is the equivalent of electricity to your appliances. So if you had a refrigerator, call it a Sub-Zero or a whatever, and you ran out of electric or you don't have it anymore, the food's going to rot inside, just like an entrepreneur. So I have, so I'm an INFJ. Do you know what that is?
Yep. Introvert, intuitive, thinking and judging, right? I think.
Yeah. Right. What are you?
I'm an ENFP.
ENFP. Got it. So you have quite the penis. And what I mean by that is you don't keep lists and you kind of free flow things.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I'm more of a list kind of guy. I organize, I do those sort of things. And the P part is painful for a lot of people, but you're probably married to somebody who's very organized.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
And that wasn't purpose. And she's probably a J.
Oh yes. Yes.
So what do you know about INFJs?
You know what? I think that what I know is that allowing space for them to re-energize, allowing them to have their emotions, and I think allowing them that when judgments are not necessarily indictments, but they are just like their form of being creative.
So you know who some famous INFJs were?
No.
Jesus, Gandhi, Hitler, MLK, and so on. And we can use our gift of being able to feel people's feelings for good or bad. And so during my whiteboarding sessions, usually we call them, we'll do breakthroughs or blueprint strategy sessions or so. But my primary job is to take the plank out of people's eyes. And usually what happens in that period of time is there's a lot of crying or not. I don't need people to cry to be relevant because that has nothing to do with me. But I don't impose or project my life or intentions or anything on them. Some people is the first time they've ever been heard. And it's the first time they've ever actually thought about the stuff I was asking about during a conversation. So these sessions take on the average of 4 hours. I say on the average, it take 4 hours because sometimes it happens in the last 5 minutes. And sometimes it happens in the first 5 minutes that we start to unearth things. And during those sessions, usually I start off with what's your goal for meeting with me today. Usually they fly down to our farm in Georgia and spend some time with me. And I first want to have a Zoom call or a meeting just to understand their purpose. Because I've been snookered before where somebody was all about the money and it wasn't about their purpose. And we put down the goals. And by the time we're done, we'll look at the goals again. Did you attain this, this, and this? Yes, but it's not in the perspective I thought it was going to be. Because again, the biggest challenge we have is between our ears. And a lot of times it's the lies we're telling ourselves that really are our biggest barriers.
Where do those lies come from, though, Steve? I'm really curious because you said you have them sit down and you have them go through goals, right? The goals that I'm really curious, are they goals that they think that they should have because of that? That's what they, going back to what we originally talked about, was like success, that they think that is success. And I'm curious, when you actually pull the plank from their eyes, what are actually the real goals? Like, so why do we tell ourselves the lies?
Well, they didn't invest a lot of time and money. I mean, just to get to the place. And the reason they're there is for something. They're searching for something. So I'll ask what the goal is, not their goal in life, but it might be what's a beautiful life look like to you. But what's the goal that you have? Well, I've never been able to grow my business past this. And I really would like to understand how my business would look if I were able to build it to something meaningful to help more people. And I listen, and, we use a term called glass ceiling. I help people break through that glass ceiling. And again, it's usually within them the reason they're not breaking through that glass ceiling. And then I'll show them a roadmap based upon what they desire to be able to create an exponential business if they should so choose. And so their goals, you asked what the source was of them, might be to be famous, might be because some people just start to blurt out everything impressive that they've ever done. And I'm like, why you do that? And they said, well, I think people should know that I do this and this and this and this. Why? Why is that important? Well, and then it turns out, and it's like, I'm like the 5-year-old. Why? I don't understand why. And eventually it comes down to when I was a child, this happened, and I was put in this position, and I never want that to happen again, or whatever. And there's a lot of wakes driving boats out there. It's probably the majority of people who are not willing to even go there. They fashion their business after something that was, it was traumatic to them, and therefore they're never going to let somebody else do that. Well, that's a very low energy. I get that we want to do things that are positive, but if you're fashioning your business so that nobody gets hurt, well, what about if we get everybody to thrive? What about if we give them tools and mechanisms for them to be able to do amazing things? And so that's a bit of what I do. And again, the biggest lie we have out there is that money buys happiness. It doesn't. And there's a squandering of money that happens sometimes, which we need to be respectful where it comes from. But then there's also a hoarding of money. that is horrible. And I literally know billionaires that there's one billionaire busts his wife's shoes for not buying discount toilet paper versus the Charmin or whatever, literally. And it's like, that's a control issue. It doesn't make a effing difference in your life, but that's a control issue.
So how do you define success? How do you define happiness? And what do you think are the core ingredients? It doesn't matter like where you're from, if you're man, woman, like what industry you are, that you know that if someone comes to you and they say, and you start like peeking in their pantry, and you go, oh, they got that ingredient, they have that ingredient, they have that ingredient. Okay. There's a basis here for a really tasty dish, right? A really tasty life. So, how do you define success? How do you define happiness? And what are those core ingredients that you have found as you have had a front row seat to people who are looking to go from nothing to something, and people who have everything who feel like they have nothing?
So I'll start with love, because love is the foundation and basis of everything. And I mean, so the Greeks got it right. They've got 3 words for love. We only got one, which is usually misunderstood. And love for your fellow human, not having nasty intentions or so, or just because we meet people like this all the time, getting manipulated does not feel good. And because I'm an INFJ, I can tell immediately what your intentions are. I just know it. And yeah, people are transparent to me. And that's what makes people uncomfortable, is because they are transparent, like their intentions just show through. And I've been called out on it, and especially when people violently respond to me or react to me. I know it hit a nerve, and it wasn't intentional. I'm not saying inappropriate things, but I'm calling them out on their shit. So love is the most important thing to aspire to. And a lot of us entrepreneurs who have screwed up no longer have a relationship with this one or that one, but most importantly is your kids. That's a hole in the heart of a person. And so having a good, solid relationship with your children is so important. At the farm, we've hosted 5 family retreats where we had facilitators come in and talk about, why were we put on earth? What's our mission? What's the legacy that we want to leave as this family? What does Distante mean, and how will people remember us? And the reason that was really important was we gave each other permission to call each other out on our bullshit. And so just recently we had a situation, and my son's 24, just got his pilot's license, love him. And my daughter is 29, both entrepreneurs. My son's got an electric skateboard company called BKB, Build Kit Boards. He builds everything. He does the whole 9 yards in China, and then they ship over, and he manufactures parts, and then you order online and you build your own board. And then my daughter has a set design company. I'm probably minimizing it, but she creates virtual worlds now in Hollywood and stuff. But we gave each other the ability to call each other out when things weren't right. And he had a girl I think he planned to marry. And this is very wrong, very recent, and very, very private, but she wanted nothing to do with us as a family. And that's a non-starter. Like, she was trying to divide us. And she had, if you've heard the phrase, an outer locus of control. Things happen to her, not for her. And like this slippery slope. So we had the conversation. Her son is just, my wife likes to say, you're an old soul. Like, wow, like how you could have such wisdom at such a young age at 24. And I attribute that all to the family retreats, which I don't think anybody does, but I do. And they're huge, and they're huge. So, and the family compound, which is the farm, that gives us quality time together in a place that you can't imagine. So that's one of the other aspects, is a relationship. Relationships matter. And as an entrepreneur, unfortunately, the people who don't have money or don't have the same success that maybe we're seeing, decide to manipulate you because they haven't achieved it, or they push you away, or they feel less than, or whatever. And it's happened so many times in entrepreneurs' lives. It's really sad, but you create a whole new group of friends. They're not your family, but a whole new group of friends. And you hope that some of the family that understands that we're not cursed because we have success. It's just, this is what we do. We use our energy and focus it on things that maybe you're not focusing it on. So you lose some of your family because there's resentment, jealousy. What do they say? Jealousy and envy. Jealousy is when they want what you have, and envy is when they want you to, yeah, they want you to lose it. Schadenfreude is another word, right? So family, your nucleus of family is really, really important. Love. And then I like to talk about the throne that we've built when we're in our business. And I talk about the antichrist of acquisition companies, private equity, where they're going to take the company that you've created and gut it with OPM, other people's money, right? They're going to buy it. They're going to gut it. They're going to throw everybody aside. And then they're going to resell it or so. They just care about the money. And you're in a position right now, Mr. or Mrs. Entrepreneur, to be able to take your success and use it for something that aligns with your soul, with your heart, that viscerally connects you to something that you believe is important. And that's what success looks like, where you're able to take that position you're in and use it up a level and do something really positive for people, for the planet, and align it with your purpose. Those are the 3 P's, right? And when you can do that, you create a love for your business, for your employees. I don't believe anybody works for me. They work with me. And my goal is to make every single one of the people I work with a millionaire. That's my goal. Well, how the heck do you do that? So right now, I'm likely to take 2 of my companies on October 1st, create an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan. I wrote about that in my first book, Pitchology. And I found out there was a whole bunch of nuances and a whole bunch of curmudgeons in that world. My wife and I are still going to own half the companies. We're going to still have warrants and the ability to build the company for everybody. And I think that's a beautiful life for me. And I'm just sharing. So when I wrote Pitchology, it was so that I wouldn't see my friends who are fellow entrepreneurs get taken advantage of. I didn't want that. So I gave them about 18 different ways that they could monetize their companies, what investors were looking for. And so creating a beautiful life and being able to creating that beautiful life and being able to connect that viscerally to the entrepreneur in a way that makes it so much higher level. So what are the 3 different levels of leadership in my books? I write about this. It's manipulation, motivation, and inspiration. So inspiration is the highest level. And if you can create inspiration within your business, because that's where people mostly get tired. They're not in that inspiration mode. They're in that mode of, I'm doing this for money and now it's no longer fun. Well, stop doing that, find somebody who does the shit that you don't like. And then take this throne, this kingdom that you've created and use it to influence others. How could you do that? I don't know how. I'm just putting the question over here in our parking lot. How can I create a kingdom, or I don't want to be biblical here, but or a resource or inspiration for others who are also in that industry or so. That's that's a huge part. And then variety for me is really huge. So my front lawn at the farm, I think, is 60 acres or 50 acres. It's like crazy. And I get to visit, the I was getting filmed on Tuesday for this 100 days of transformation thing that Jeff Hayes is doing. And they said, I just want some glamour shots. I'm like, dude, you're on a farm. I'm not giving you glamour shots. took me pictures of me fishing and all this other stuff. And then he and I are sitting on a bench for like an hour and a half meditating. And he says to me, he goes, I really got to get some footage. I said, all right, let's go over here. And we bought some sheep, and 3 of them happened to be pregnant, babies. And we bought these collars so they could go out into the field and eat the grass around the trees without having to put fences around them. Well, that didn't work out. We had a bunch of sheep running all over the property, and we don't want to get them killed. So I got to lasso sheep. And, my cowboy, Thomas, and he's literally a cowboy, he ran cattle and everything, couldn't get him with lasso. And I think we had 7 sheep we were looking to lasso. I got 2 in the first one, and he's getting this video and stuff. And I said, how many of these have you done? He goes, interviews with whatever they call us. He goes, I think I'm on 11. I said, I hope not all of them are catching sheep. And he's like, well, 6 of them were. And I'm like, yeah, right. Okay, great. But that's a great, unique experience. I never did that before. And I do that over and over and over again. And I said to Thomas, our farm manager, I said, I want 5 more goats. Give me goats. And he's like, okay, we'll get some goats in here. And the idea is for them to mow between the trees, poop, make it better, and then move that all around the farm, because my daughter just got engaged, and she wants to have the wedding at the farm where they grow all the food and meat, and that's where the wedding's going to be. And so it's a tall order. It's about 3 growing seasons in the future, but we'll get there. So I like having these goals and then intertwining. Okay, I got Airstreams over here, and I've got retreats over there, and so all these things kind of manifest them into something bigger. And that's my joy, is to watch how it develops and grows into something amazing. So, and they're all entrepreneur. I can't typically engage in something that's not entrepreneurially inclusive, I'd say, because there's always a way of being able to make some money. But I don't do everything in my life to make money. I actually have my wife make a decision. I said, like this beach house, are we renting the sucker out when we're not here 90% of the time? Or nope, that's my house. Okay, great. But this, yeah, we're going to rent this out.
Yeah. Steve, I just had the realization, I think I've had you pegged all wrong. Yes, you do a lot of entrepreneurial things, but you're a gardener. You're a gardener at heart. You're strategic. I think plants are feeling. There's studies that show like, hey, if you have plants in your office, that you're 15 to 20% more productive, right? Plants are energy. And I just had this realization. That's what you do, is that you see a seed bed that's maybe been mistended, unweeded, unplanned, and you bring it into a semblance of balance, and you get the seed bed correct. You get the feeding program correct, right? You understand in terms of the that you got to bring pollinators in, right? You got all of these different things. You don't have monoculture, right? You have a really thriving ecosystem. And that's how you've built all of these companies. And it's just as one garden after another garden. And your core ingredients, your principles for this, what I just took from what you were talking about is in the book, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, it's one of my favorite cooking books, but it's you said love, relationships, family, and impact. I find that so fascinating that you've literally taken gardening and gardening principles and regenerative farming, and you just have brought that to a entrepreneurial system. And not only that, but you've created a gardening program that allows other people who go, hey, do you want to have a regenerative farming that will not only create impact, but will create in great abundance for yourself and others? And that's what you've been doing.
And draw down 11 times the carbon of any tree on the earth, and create a tremendous amount of revenue for you, and I have the end and the end and the end. I never even thought about it from that perspective. So good on you, Ben, for doing that. I prefer probably farmer versus gardener, but that's okay.
I believe that farmers actually were God's first entrepreneurs.
Mm.
right? Because it's all, as entrepreneurs, we make guesses and bets, right? I mean, so for a lot of people who don't know about farming, but specifically in monoculture, like when you're going to plant like, corn, you want to wait for the soil to get to like 55.1 degrees, and then you want to plant, right? And then you want certain level of soil moisture, right? And then if you want to get it like another level up, regenerative farming, right? Like how do you actually always keep moisture in there? How do you become famine resistant, right? I mean, these are all the things that you are doing for people in your own businesses.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great perspective, and I appreciate that. Thanks for giving me that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, it just, now this makes sense. And it also tells me in terms of why you have been so incredibly successful and why you have lasted. Your success is not a strategy until it's not a strategy, is that Mother Nature doesn't lie. Regenerative farming just flat out works. And one of my favorite books, which I'm sure you've read, Dirt to Soil by Gabe Brown. By the way, that should be required reading for every single American. It was a book that I had read, and I was like, if this had been explained to me like this in high school, I was like, I could have fallen in love with science really easily. Steve, I want to ask you another question. You said something a little bit back about you help people through glass ceilings, because people who know how to break through glass ceilings have already broken through a bunch of glass ceilings. So, two questions I have for you. Have you had glass ceilings? And if yes, what have they been? And two, if you haven't, does this all equate back to the fact of that you broke through the glass ceiling of the umbilical cord around your neck as you're coming out of the womb into this world? I mean, talk to me a little bit about that.
So we all have glass ceilings, and certainly I've broken through glass ceilings, but I've realized that a lot of times the glass ceiling I'm looking to break through can be solved with a who. Finding the right person, because you've kind of come up to the point at which you now need certain skills or personality to make that happen. So I've hit glass ceilings, but then I typically would shift. And what could a glass ceiling be? It could be money. It could be capacity. It could be, and I like to say, we break it and build it, break it and build it, break it and build it. We keep going through that process. And I want you to think longer term, 100x instead of 10x, because we're just going to break it again. And I like to build my organizations as an accordion where they get stretched wide open or come back in, especially during financial difficulty. So in my life, I've experienced all of that. And, I don't want to waste. So we have energy, of course, right? I think I describe this thing called the entrepreneurial triangle. The entrepreneurial triangle is we have drive, we got to use that energy. We've got an allergic reaction to rules, and then we have an appetite for risk, right? That's what the triangle looks like. And the way we use our energy is a direct connection to your success or failure. So what do people do with their energy? Well, they might do drugs to squash their energy, right? Or they drink or whatever. So their energy goes down and they don't realize that, well, this trauma or whatever you're trying to squash is actually something that could be used for positive things. So when I'm going through a challenge, so we have a thing called HALTs, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, stressed. When you're in that state, right? Typically, you're not in your best mind, right? So I'll put my hand on my chest and I go, listen, little Stevie, it's been a long day. Let's go to bed. Don't give any energy to this right now, because you don't want to feed the dragon more food, because you're going to get bigger. You want to cut it off. You want to cut the dragon's head off when it's little, right? And so when I'm dealing with stuff that I can't control, I'll typically use that energy to do something that's productive, and I'll get some small wins out of my way. And sometimes, they say you can't read the label when you're inside the jar. Sometimes it'll come to you, and nobody's as good as their team. And so often I'll go to my team and I'll say, this is what I'm working on. I need, I need some thoughts about this. They'll ask me a few questions. It's a whole process that we have. And then I'll be able to give them feedback, because that's the other mistake that I see a lot of entrepreneurs make, is their glass ceiling is the fact that they're the sun and the planets are rotating around them. Well, heck, I'm not even the sun anymore. I own the universe. And owning the universe allows me to actually look outside like I'm, a creator, which I am to a certain degree, and watch. Okay, wait a second. This planet should be over here, and this should be over there, and this person definitely shouldn't be in our orbit, and this person definitely belongs to be within the ecosystem. Yet they're just in the wrong seat. So all of those things are readjusting the variables that go into building a business. And it gives you the ability to replant the garden in a way that thrives. So now you don't have something that's causing, the deer to come in and eat all the leaves and then not leave enough carbohydrates in the roots so the plant doesn't grow again. And well, you get the picture. It's a big experiment. It's a big experiment, and success leaves clues. You see things that work, and then you make a tear on it. And then other times it doesn't, and you bang your head against the wall. And I was sitting in one of those coach meetings, the free zone meetings, and I have these revelations once in a while. Some days I'm totally quiet, and some days I'm a chatty Cathy, right? No, that was not a derogatory statement towards people in Cathy. It was just a saying. I wrote down CAIOIT. I said, anybody that's not doing a chief AI officer in training right now is out of their minds. Because we believe, we go to those seminars and we go to the Zooms and you have that circus leader in front of you going, hey, we're going to do this with AI. And now watch this. And like you pick up like 2% of it. Like, how does this apply to my life? I don't even know, but it was really cool. I wrote a book about bees and I didn't know anything about bees. And now I got a book on bees and I don't even care about bees. A chief AI officer in command. And so the eyes can only see what the mind is looking for. I keep using these Sullivan-esque phrases. And the reality is that's true, right? So I've been on the hunt for those people, and I'm a who hunter. That's the name of my next book. It's Who Hunter. And it's all about finding those right who's in your life that can help you get to that next level, because there's a certain amount of our energy that gets diminished when we need to keep monitoring people and doing what they're doing. And it's exhausting. So how could we create a process around it? So some of my people are addicted to getting Asana tasks done.
Yep. Make it reoccur, people. There you go.
And they love it. My farm manager is self-admitted, and I don't know if he is or isn't, is ADD. He goes, I forget a lot of the stuff you tell me. If you put it in Asana, I'll get it done. And it's like middle of the night, I'll hear click, or whatever. I don't listen to my phone at night, but he'll be doing this all hours of the day just to get stuff off that list because he's a competitive being. And so breaking through glass ceilings or hitting brick walls or getting beat up on the rocks of a river are all the same story. It's, when water's going down a hill and it hits a rock, what does it do? It goes around it, right? And so when you're hitting a glass ceiling, it's really that you can see the other side, but you don't know how to get there. And sometimes it's who's, and sometimes it's another direction, because I think the universe is kind. It'll actually protect us against things that aren't supposed to be. We're not supposed to make three-eyed children or so. So that's a stupid idea. So we're not going to let you do it or so, not get beyond approval. But that's how in my life I've seen things. I look at it from every angle, and then I look for the universe to respond. And it sounds so, I don't know, metaphysical or so, but it's not, because I think, let me tell you this, as an INFJ and as an EMT many years ago, I used to say to people, oh yeah, you could definitely see the difference between a live person and a dead person. You could see their spirit leave their body and so on. And like, people would always yes me. I didn't realize that people didn't see that. And our energy and the energy that we have and the flow that we have, it's there. And sometimes it's there for the taking, like what it is. And people try to force their will or beat their shoulder against a wall or hit this glass ceiling and they don't know how to get through it. And the truth is, it's like the guy who was, very faithful and there was a flood and, police officer comes to the door. He goes, "You have to leave. The flood's coming. I have faith. God will save me." He gets to the second floor. There's a boat. Then he's on the roof. And then there's a helicopter that comes. And he says, "No, God will save me." And he dies. And he, "God, you failed me." He goes, "I sent a cop. I sent a boat. I sent a helicopter." And it's the same thing for us. Those people are showing up in your life. You just don't see them. And that's what happens to me. And it's always these stories. You're never going to believe. Yeah, I'll believe. You're never going to believe who showed up. Wow, look at that. Huh. How did that happen? Easiest thing in the world. And when you know it's easy, right? Sometimes it's meant to be, other times not. But when there's not a lot of barriers, like, so I was telling you before, I have a plane that flies me up and down to Georgia, a little bigger aircraft. And then I have two smaller planes that we're all training in. And suddenly somebody from the FAA had approached me and says, "How'd you like to create a school?" I'm like, "Okay, how do you do that? And then how can we make money?" And so on. And now all of a sudden this whole thing is happening and I have a great mechanic who I couldn't find in New York. And like all of these people are showing up and I know it's right so far based upon all of the pieces coming together in such an easy way.
It's your field of dreams moment, right? If you build it, they will come. I mean, is that part of that? Just in terms of someone said, "Hey, you should build build out a school." You go, "Okay." Like, you don't know how, you don't have all the who's, right? But yet you listened. That's the biggest lesson I'm taking from you is like the universe, God, wherever you're at in that spectrum is always talking to you.
Yeah. And you don't know why you're looking at it. You don't know what you're looking at it for. And it's always people. It always comes through people. And then people have credibility. They're who. And I wouldn't do it if I wasn't able to make money because I'm not the not-for-profit guy. From that perspective, I'll give money to people. I'll donate things to people, but I need to know that it's sustainable. And that's the reason I started the farm was I wanted to be here to farmers to show them how they create a sustainable revenue flow. And then year after year, I should make between $2 and $4 million a year in wood when we start harvesting in about 6 years. It'll happen every year, turn into a cash machine. But I like about the trees is it transforms Georgia clay into black dirt, which is amazing, or soil. And that's a big deal for me. It draws down 11 times the carbon, as I said before. That's what keeps me going. And it turns into a living lab. And that's just what happens. So I do things, and then maybe I'll talk about it. Most people talk about things, and then maybe they do it. And that's the entrepreneurial curses. Who's telling me? He says, "You know what? Everybody wanted to be a professional athlete." And then it was Carrie Oberbrunner. He says, "Everybody wanted to be a professional athlete. Used to be. Then everybody wanted to be a rapper. Now all the professional athletes and rappers want to be entrepreneurs. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur." I'm like, you gotta understand, it's not your DNA, dude. Like it's not like you could just do this and you have a sustained amount of revenue that's going to be coming in and so on. It's about the challenges and then seeing the light in the challenges that you can see your greatest opportunities. Because if you're going through it, most times other people are going through the same thing, right? So I was interviewing on a podcast with another fella, Jeff. I forgot Jeff's last name, but he pretty much helps franchisees go into business. You know what I'm talking about or no?
Yeah, I do, but I can't remember Jeff's last name.
Dudan. That's it. And so it's funny. I said, "Who's my audience? Who are we talking to?" And he says, "People who are going into franchises and so on." And I said, "Okay, so have they been entrepreneurs before?" He goes, "No." Fascinating. So I did this whiteboarding with my massage therapist and her partner. And she was telling me the biggest difficulty was getting masseuses or whatever you call them. I'm sorry. But getting them. And I said, well, one, you could start a school. And two is you could take a group, because she said men masseuses are not well accepted. I said, what about if they're blind? And she goes, hmm. And then we went down this rabbit hole, and it turns out I meet the president of Lighthouse for the Blind and jumped on a call with him. And I said, listen, we're looking to train a bunch of blind people how to do massage. I said, what do I need to know? He goes, Steve, there's two types of blind people, born blind and newly blind. I said, newly blind, like last week? He goes, no, just sometime in their life, they turn blind. I said, okay. He goes, and I said, what's the difference? He goes, well, the ones who were born blind just never even knew what sight meant, and they don't try to do anything like they used to. The people who are newly blind, unfortunately, try to keep doing things compared to the way they saw when they were, when they could see. And that's their biggest obstacle. And so when I'm on this podcast, I said, most of your people are newly blind. They've never been an entrepreneur before. And get ready for a world of hurt, because the reality is, we're not walking out at 5 o'clock every night. That's just not what happens. You didn't earn that yet. And you're probably going to bleed in the first 3 to 5 years. Guess what? You might have to take your kids' college education out. Guess what? You may have to be on your knees with vendors. And that's just part of the business. But as a franchisee, you might do better because you're able to put some capital into it and so on. So when I talk about entrepreneurship with people, a lot of times they're solopreneurs, they're professionals. They don't understand our DNA in order to inspire others, to get people to do what we need them to do through inspiration. And they don't know how to get a clear vision and clarity. I constantly use the GPS. Listen, if you got in your car and you had no place to go, you'd spin in a circle. And almost every business you're looking at doesn't have any direction. They don't have a team. Having a team and having a direction is the most important thing you got to do when you're building a business. And if you're the sun and all the planets go around you, guess what? When the sun goes out at night, let's say it turned off at night, you're not earning any money. And that's the life, that's the cage, that's the jail we build if we think we're the business. The reality is we are the people, the visionaries, the architects of the business. That's just how we should function. If you can't take a 6-month vacation, well, you don't have a business, you have a job. You teach people how to think from your perspective, WWSD, what would Steve do? Or what would Jeff do? Or what would Ben do? And then you test it out. And you say, okay, what would you do in this circumstance? And building a team, a real team, is important. In my second book, Once Upon a Time in Entrepreneurland, I tell a story about a watchmaker who comes from a whole family of sheep herders. And that watchmaker watched his friend after a while slipping pieces of gold into his pocket and realized he was getting taken advantage of. That was me. I had about $1.5 million stolen from my closest friend. And the reality is that happens all the time. I call it entrepreneurial rape. It's not a sexy or probably politically correct thing to say, but most entrepreneurs do get stolen from, and they never talk about it because they feel stupid. They let it happen. And the reality is it's a painful pill to swallow. But if you can't control the money that's going on in your business, how are you supposed to control a business that now has this vision and direction? How do you do that? It's all about building systems, processes, and a team that works, a team that gets it. And it's like a crew boat. Everybody's in the crew boat. They got their oars in the water and they're rowing the same direction. And that's where people struggle.
Yeah. How would you tell our audience, if you were to be building a team today, this is how you're doing it? Imagine this is like your farm and you are planting out the crops for the year. Like that's kind of what your team is, right? Your team is these, in a lot of ways, guesses and bets in people's talents, in their heart, right? In their capability. How would you tell someone today, now that you know what you know, and all the teams you've built, all the teams you've helped other people build are like the 3 to 5 critical things that need to be in every team?
Hmm. I think it has to be both sexes. I think men and women need to be, not boys and girls usually. There needs to be diversity on the group, different lifestyles and different people. Um, don't build a yes person group. Have the ability for people to be able to kindly disagree. Have people who are committed to what it is that they're going to be doing, meaning accountable. And I know when I said that word, it was probably, I don't know how many listeners you're going to have for this, but when I said accountable, like they just got like sweaty about it. Like, God, like they stay up at night thinking about what other people just didn't do. And I used to do that. Accountability is really important and knowing their job, but that only comes with knowing where you're going and having the vision for the company. And how's that going to look in the next 3 years or 5 years or 10 years or lifetime of the business? That's a really, really big part. And then transparency. So I use a thing called MAP, which is like EOS, which is like, the Rockefeller habits and so on. And MAP, Management Action Programs, formed in 1965, has these vital factors that you look at, which are called your KPIs nowadays. I think they just reworded it, rebranded every single part of the way it works. And most of us are flying around blind, and we're not willing to even divulge to our team members that we don't know what the hell's going on. And so making people accountable and then being transparent on the numbers and the productivity, and then talking to your team about what needs to happen. I went through a crisis in 2015, 2016. And I had spoken to a fella who told me, he said, Jack Welch once told me when he went through his crisis, he said, the greatest thing about entrepreneurs is their optimism. And the worst part about entrepreneurs is their optimism. And that stuck with me. And he says, and when you go to, because we were talking about reducing people's hours. So now everybody works 30 hours instead of 40 hours, and we get to do this and that. And then maybe firing one or two people. And he goes, no, when you reduce costs and you cut staff, you cut quick and you cut deep. And then you assure your team that they are the people who are going to help get us out of this whole situation and thrive. Because what happens is, for companies that are doing those sort of strategies, often lose their A players who are worth like 3 or 4 people that are on a team. And so when we're building a company, go toward building a team. And I like to have COO as like a launch ramp to president. And chief operating officer is a really important one. In my experience, those are the Swiss Army knives of the company that does everything, makes sure everything gets done, and is a tremendous resource to the leadership. And so building a team, I don't know how many companies that have a robust team. Most of them don't. And they're dictators, or they're gods, or they're whatever, illusion they're having. But the reality is they're the bottleneck. They're the block and challenge to growing that business, because you suck as a operator of a business. I just came back from this wonderful seminar. Now we're all going to write in purple crayon. Yeah. And we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Your organization has an immunity to you if you build it right. That's just it. I mean, and I learned that from Salim Ismail from Exponential Organizations. And his book talks about you have to create a research and development team in order to develop those things, those ideas, but not taking away from your team. Your team needs to be able to do their job, because that job is going to create the money, and the money is going to be able to do what creates what it is that you're looking to develop. But it may be a mistake. It may be the wrong thing. I've been working on it. So I have a clone. So if you go to pitchology.ai, right, I have a clone. And the reason I grew a clone or made a clone, I have over 2,500 hours worth of content in there, is because I used to talk in front of universities and I couldn't answer all the questions that students would ask me, and the EO members, and when I worked with the UN, like that kind of stuff. I never could answer everybody's question. I felt really guilty. Again, I'm a 6'7", 5'3". I'm like Colby, so my follow through haunts me. And so this clone actually was developed to be able to answer people's questions, but it's also for me to become a clonologist, right? Where I get to learn how to use clones in a really, really meaningful way. So one of our biggest problems that we have, and I lost my chief compliance officer, I believe, to a lawsuit from a jealous nephew, a greedy nephew, who sued us. And the guy who died didn't even like the nephew. He had fully documented the guy wasn't demented or any of those things. Long story short, our chief compliance officer was such an empath. He never came back a day to work after we did a mediation, and he had been told that he had to take a 30-day sit down, meaning he couldn't work anymore in the industry for 30 days, which was fine. But it killed him. And I'm building a clone now that's going to interview people for cognitive impairment, and I'm just going to give it to our industry. And that's what I like to do. I like to take my life experiences, but then I'm also building a clone that answers a lot of questions for the team, the hundreds of people that we have that work for our sales team, and then to sit in on client meetings, take notes, and be able to fill out forms. That's the way my brain works exponentially. But I don't take from the people who are creating the revenue and the people who are servicing the company off, and do these crazy things. I do them in my R&D, with my R&D hat on. And that's what really helps me a lot. And so when people talk about exponential growth, how do you get that if you're the sun and the planets all rotate around you? We need to see past that. Or like Dan Sullivan has created, he does it in groups. So now he does like 3 groups or 4 groups or whatever the heck it is. And they have dozens and dozens, I'm sure, of other groups. And you're a coach for a coach, or strategic coach. So there you go. All the wisdom is kind of passed down, and the systems and processes have been adopted. And that's what it's all about, is being able to be, a scientist of your business, be a visionary, and develop those things that are important to you, in order for then you to be able to find who's that are going to take it now and operate it. And so like the stealing of money for an entrepreneur, what did I do for that? Well, I get text alerts every time certain things happen. I get all my bank statements come to the house. I live in this little working class neighborhood. One of the houses we have in New York, it's like a little nothing. And I literally get like 60 or 70 bank statements. And the mailman was going, what the hell is with this place? Like, what is going on here? And I don't look at all 60 or 70, but I have the illusion of control. And I can pull it open. And I do make sure that there's checks in there. And I do make sure there's not random things going on in there. And all of those things. So there's an antidote to a lot of the pain that we feel or have. It's just being willing to go there and deal with it. And I learned a long time ago, I like to run into a fire rather than away from a fire. I'm ready. That's what I do. I'm ready for this. Let's just do this. And it's become addictive, actually, in that, how do you want to handle this? And I go, I got it. It's no problem. I actually enjoy this. It's not like I'm a bully. It's just, I know the pain that it's going to inflict on others. And it's the least I could do for my team, who's working so damn hard, and they want me to talk to somebody or let somebody go or have a difficult conversation all day long. I love to do that because I do it with compassion. I do it with love. I don't do it where I do it in a derogatory sense. I talk to people like they're people, like I'd want to be talked to. And usually they're relieving them. They'll go, you know what? I had the same thought. I realize that this is happening or so, or you just have to wake them up and say, hey, by the way, I don't think you understand the gravity of this situation, do you? And usually if they're talking to me, there's gravity.
Well, I love that you've outlined that. By the way, I think running into fires, I think oftentimes that gets misconstrued is that we are arsonists ourselves, and that we start the fire that we run into, which is sometimes true. But I think that the thing that happens when I think about fires, I think about forest fires, is that there's reclamation that happens like after the fire burns down. I mean, most seeds, you go west, right, in the redwoods, most of those seeds cannot germinate unless the heat gets over 2000 degrees. And I think as entrepreneurs, I think that we get that it's often we need the 2000-degree heat for the seed, the real observation, the real universe gift, God's gift to really germinate.
Without a doubt. I love that analogy too, because I was a firefighter. And when you wear the polarized glasses, so you go back in there, with your military vehicles and things, and you put out the hot spots, you'll see all the green popping up. And you could see the little seedlings popping up. They're only this big, but because you have polarized glasses on, you could see like they pop out like really relevant. And so I'm very intentional. I was going to go down a rabbit hole of how we do controlled burns on the farm and such, because the reality is those controlled burns prevent a catastrophe in the future, which is probably a relevant metaphor. But I have many mantras, and one of them is never waste a crisis. You just got a ticket, a permission slip to do whatever the hell you want with your crazy. And so you bring them into a room or into a circumstance or whatever and say, I need this done tonight. When normally it'd be, I'd like to book that on the 15th of never. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's great. How about now? Or, I'd like you to make a decision. And you're on the phone with them and you go, okay, I can wait. Not call me back. I can wait. They know you mean business. And so not wasting a crisis, what does that mean exactly? And that means that when we're confronting our issues, first, don't pretend it doesn't exist, because ostriches do that, right? And we're not ostriches. We need to deal with things. And where there's smoke, there's sometimes fire. So act as if. Be cautionary with things from the perspective of it could be real. And if it is, what happens? And so being able to address things more like that in your business, run into fires, is really important. And yeah, I have that arsonist conversation all the time with people. Are you a paid firefighter? Or are you a volunteer firefighter? Or are you an arsonist? And the truth is, in our DNA as entrepreneurs, we like to start small fires and we like to kick beehives just for the fun of it, because we can, because of our risk thing, that energy, because we want to be zapped alive. Right? We like to live in energized situations. And when people are just wet noodles, we want to do something to wake them up.
Yeah. That is so true. It's so true. Let's talk a little bit about risk. I personally, I really don't love the word, because I feel like it diminishes or connotates like a behavior that is like that we're thrill seekers. And I think that like someone who's trained and you were talking about the military, right? You have like SEALs and the 101st Airborne, right? These people who do lots and lots and lots of jumps, right? So for someone who hasn't done it, it seems like it's kind of crazy. Like, why would you jump out of something that's perfectly capable of flying? And but for someone who's done it a lot, it's just like it's like walking. And I think for entrepreneurs, the thing that I think it's misconstrued is that what we do is risky. Because you could you could literally say, you know, I'm setting my alarm for 5:15 a.m. And if you get up, great, you accomplished. If you didn't, right, you didn't, right? That is the same level of activity that we as entrepreneurs do. We make a guess and a bet, right? I think that this is what it's going to be. And then we put things in motion. Like we set our alarm, you know, we try to go to bed at a decent time, right? You know, we don't eat too close to, you know, to bedtime, and, you know, we stop drinking liquids, you know, 3 hours before, so that we can do all these things. And maybe we actually get up for the alarm and maybe we don't. But no one would ever say that you setting an alarm and saying, I want to wake up at 5 or 4 or 4:30 a.m. Now they might say, wow, that's really early. Wow, that's really early. But they would never say that's risky behavior. That's not risk. That's you're taking a lot of risk in doing that. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that, considering that you've, you know, multiple RIAs that are $1 billion plus, right? You know, all these broker dealers, your farm, you know, and there's so many businesses that you've either had a hand in creating or you have created, that other people would say, boy, it seems like you're taking a lot of risk.
So Steve Jobs said it best: bet big, but don't bet the farm. And what does that mean? That means, how can we leverage where we are now to get big gains in the future? And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't cost us everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So I'm paying a couple $1,000,000 a year in insurance, E&O insurance. And I have a consultant that I work with, and I've been having this on my radar for a decade because I rarely have losses. Like, I think the biggest loss I had was that one case where my CCO unfortunately passed away. It was like 400 something $1,000. It wasn't a lot of money, and I would never have paid it because the guy wasn't qualified, but the insurance company insisted. So now I've created an insurance company, and I've got millions of dollars in reserves because I never pay it out. And I'm able to take an expense on my operating company, and the insurance company doesn't have to show all that revenue because 80 or 90% of it is considered reserves. So there's no income there, just the 10% or so. Well, shit, was that risky? Well, by the way, I have reinsurance for higher deductibles. Was that risky? No, I engineered a steel trap to be able to make it happen. And then I don't have ridiculous clauses in, in my in the way my policy is written and so on. I have a Filipino company because I wanted to put my culture in. I was sharing that before the podcast, right? Because I wanted people on the other side of the world to be working when we're sleeping so that my team doesn't get bludgeoned. And guess what? Everybody's afraid of losing their jobs to AI. I'm not. Not me, my team. I'm not. My goal is to use AI, to use our BPO, our business processing organization in the Philippines, to keep the same team we have for a very long time, as long as they choose to work with us, and then create this very large version of what we have, which is a pretty large company so far, but it's going to get even bigger. So we're a mid-sized firm. When you look at us, PE approaches us all the time. I have no interest. I couldn't stomach the thought for all these souls that we have that work with us. And so the ESOP makes a whole lot of sense. And so I engineer a beautiful work of art, and I'll make mistakes, but I'm not afraid to make those mistakes. And so it's not risk. What it is re-engineering the way we do things in a way where the upside is substantially more meaningful than the downside, which could be the loss of money. Sometimes I say I'm burning money right now. But what that means is I'm spending extra money on a project, but it's because I have it. I could use the tax deduction and eventually I could pull it back. Or if we have some sort of crisis, I could pull it back at any particular moment. So those are the things I think of when I think of risk. And how many entrepreneurs have you known that they've sold their businesses and then just start risking money on other ventures, right? So they see people that look like them, smell like them, talk like them, and they go, "Oh, I'll give them 100 grand, I'll give them $1 million, whatever it is," and then only to be disappointed because they never built in, well, how do I exit from this thing? Are they going to be transparent with me? Like all the things that go on with private investment, and that's our risk. That's what we do, but we could do it in our own businesses in a quantified way. And when we only have that corpus of money to mess with, that's the only thing we can control. And we can't make more of it if we screw up, but we get a thrill from it. We get energy from trying to do good things with the money that we have. We don't feel good about, US savings bonds as our primary investment vehicle.
Oh, Steve, you said something I think super profound here in the fact you said the word engineering. And so I think in addition to you being a farmer, I think this is one of your other brilliant things I've like in your books, having been in many rooms with you and listening to you reverse engineer like outcomes, right? You see the outcome. You talked about, hey, we need clarity. We need that vision, right? So that then you can make that commitment. But the commitment is only able if you can actually reverse engineer. So I'm really curious for anyone who's listening, right? Who are maybe is already an high flying and like a growth minded individual entrepreneur, or someone who's maybe thinking about making that hard decision. Do I sell the PE? Do I do an ESOP? Right. So at one end, or someone who's listening to us going, I've always thought about maybe launching this business. What are the core 3 to 5 things that you say this is true anytime you want to engineer something? Whether it's a life, it's a decision, it's an outcome. What are the 3 to 5 things? And it could be less than that. It doesn't have to be up to 5, but what are the ingredients that have to be true when you are engineering something that you have found? Like they're principles, almost biblical, like foundational things.
Is it your unique ability?
Can you explain for the audience when you say unique ability?
Unique ability is what you were put on earth for. It's something that you can do, and it's just time passes by in such a way that you don't even know you have this gift or talent, and you don't realize it. And so, most of us have gifts and talents that we just kind of like think, just like me seeing people's spirits leave their body, which is weird. I apologize for being weird here, but it's something I see. Like literally, I see it. I'm like, well, how could that work? Like, how could I use that for the benefit of myself and others? Oh, great. I can coach entrepreneurs. Not that I'm going to kill them, but I can actually see their emotions as they're coming up and I'll go, stop. What's going on there? And unique ability is, again, something that is so, I was going to use the word inbred, which I didn't mean, which is so ingrained in your soul, something that's so easy for you. You likely had it all your life, but you didn't know it. How did you? Is that good?
Yep, that's great. Yep. So, are you using your unique ability? Number one. What's the next one?
Do you have who's? And if you don't have the who's to do it, the people whose unique ability it is to do the job or business that you're looking to develop, start to look like your eyes are going to start adjusting for that. And why are you doing this? Is it for money? Or is it really, truly something that you feel completely drawn to? Because when the going gets tough, you're going to want to fall back on the fact that that's why you're doing it. You're doing it for the betterment of something or to help this. Or so if you're not viscerally connected to it, don't bother, because you don't want to do things just for the money. That's not a good thing, because the reality is when it gets really tough, you won't be able to stick in there. But I'm talking from an evolved entrepreneur perspective. You got to start making money. Nothing happens till you sell something. And so everybody talks about doing things and never do things. The majority of the cases, I'm not going to waste time with people who just talk about it, because everybody talks about it. Everybody has ideas. Everybody has a business idea that came true somewhere else. And like, I was thinking about that. Well, so are you and a million other people, but this guy actually did it, or gal, right? So it's got to be something that's so meaningful for you that it's your North Star. It's your it's your legacy. Like if you could do this, people would remember you for a very long time. And there's one four letter word that I really resent, and that's work. Because every time I see it on my GPS or so, I'm like, it's not work. It's fun. It's creation. Engineer or artist, I don't know. You make the choice because we're using variables that other people have never used. And a lot of them are just our intuition and have nothing to do with a particular technology or some sort of engineering. It's really more of an art of feeling and an art of momentum. Like, how did I know my farm would be worth 3 or 4 times as much as it was when I bought it the day the country had shut down for COVID? I didn't know that. And boom, suddenly you got an asset. Why is that important? It's in a family trust. Why is it important? Well, I could leverage that if I ever wanted to do something else. Leverage is capability. Being able to use the resources you have is really important because you don't want to be begging. You don't want to be out there. And how many people just get it all wrong and they pitch people? My book was supposed to be called Pitch Slapped. And it was pitch, and I had a whole bunch of people that said, a group of women that said, if you name it that, we're never going to read it. And funny enough, they never read the book. Now that I call it Pitchology. But people are out there begging for money. And the reality is, if they had bought that piece of property when they were 21 years old or whatever, they could actually do a loan against it or so and be able to get their own seed money. But they don't have that long-term view. And I just want to change the way people look at the way we do entrepreneurship in a meaningful way. And that's what I do in the books. And the reason why I have a new genre, which is entrepreneurship for kids. So it's for kids 8 years old plus. A lot of adults like the book too. And that's when we still believe that we can do it. And then we're taught how we can't, or why or we don't deserve, or all those things. So before people unlearn their capabilities to dream, that's how I'm able to share that with the entrepreneurial community of children at 8 years old. And I tell stories. I have, like, my last two books are all story based, fable based, because your critic's mind goes to sleep and suddenly you're in the story and you're able to really fully involve yourself with it because I tell you the technology, the technique, the theory, the whatever it is, boring. Like, unless it applies to me right here and now, I really don't care and I'm not going to remember it. But you're going to remember BB Wolf, Big Bad Wolf, who's pounding on the Three Little Pigs door because he's got a business opportunity. Everybody just misunderstands his entrepreneurial energy. And then when he screws up and he hires a whole bunch of cats to go through Pigville to secure, their grain silos, and he realized he hired all the wrong people, or animals, I should say. And the reality was he should have hired the owls, because the owl's unique ability was to, like, stealthily go out and get the rats, and they were just having fun eating dinner. And so all of these stories allow people to put themselves in the story and then apply it to their lives. And so that's why I like the fable format so much. And, being able to help 8-year-olds is huge. I've gotten letters and emails from parents who, we found our Amazon box filled up with, $2,200 worth of equipment, and this is what they're doing. I just take great joy in hearing about all of those things. So you evolve, right? So you evolve in the things that we do. And if you build a team that works, then you can actually go have some fun in entrepreneur land. And I've trademarked both entrepreneur land and Pitchology. I'm very proud of that. Part of the farm has entrepreneur land in it. And that's where we're going to be able to play. That's our sandbox as entrepreneurs, is entrepreneur land, and where we can help other entrepreneurs to scale and grow. And do we need to get paid for that? Well, I don't know. I think if you want to take equity in it, keep it interesting, that's fine. But that gives me great satisfaction to be able to apply our entrepreneurial skills, experiences, where we actually give them some credibility because we invested money in them or spent time with them and give them credibility. That's how we can give back. And when we're doing things in our business, risk, right? It's usually quantified risk. It's not something that we're going to go and spend all of our money on unless we're just stupid. But there's so many entrepreneurs that have lost it all because they're bored as hell or gone through drug addiction, suicide. Like that's just goes with the territory. It's a reality that we're addicted to risk. And risk is not a bad thing. It's just our true motivator. When I was speaking in a prison not too long ago, I don't know if you ever saw any of that content that I had, but about 120 prisoners down in Texas, they were the top 10%. And I said, you guys are the same as me. It's just how you channel your energy because you guys decided to do it maybe in something illegal or you got caught or whatever it is that you did. But the reality is, we're the same personality type. How we use our energy for good, for bad, that's what's important. And risk is just one of our games that we play in order to leverage up. It's like a ladder. It's just leveraging us up and up and up. Because the truth is that we don't have resources. We are resourceful. And if you don't have resources, what does that do? And people think, I got to get a loan. I used to work with one organization for inner city kids, and they give them $5,000 and $10,000 loan grants, or not even grants. They would just give it away, whatever it was. None of them ever started a business. Money was just gone, made the bank feel really good, and they never did anything with it. I'd rather start with $1 and show me how you turn it to $10. And then when you got $10, they give you $100. I want to show you how you could do it with $1,000 and so on. That's the true gift, being able to create something from nothing.
That's amazing. And by the way, I will be ordering your book. That is amazing. It is so interesting that you have really narrowed it down to the fact that we had all these capabilities and they're actually still there. It's just that someone piled a bunch of their own dirt, right? Their own perceptions, their own judgments on top of these capabilities. And that right now you're in the process of preventing that for, kids 8 and up, right? From that happening. But for people who are listening who go, maybe they've achieved levels of success, but they don't have that joy, right? That Dan Martell has this quote that came out lately. It said that feels like play, looks like work. And that's what you're talking about. So for people who have success who are listening to this, but don't feel like what you can clearly see Steve is actually living, right? He's literally living as he's talking about being in that pocket, that moment. How do people relearn or unlearn the learning that hid their capabilities?
I think it's a lifetime journey. And there's always these things that come to us as we evolve and grow. Starting with a beginner's mind all the time. Because if you think you're the smartest person in the room, the truth is you aren't. But if you think so, that's all that's ever going to happen is you're not going to learn anything. And when you show up, be truly interested in that person. Like, allow them to be heard and do something that makes you feel good because because you're giving back somehow. What are you giving back for? Because if you're just buying yourself Ferraris and doing stuff that's all self-pleasuring, is there any way that you can go external to that? Because that's where the greatest gains are going to be.
Well, I love that, Steve. You have shared generously, and I wish I had had a notepad today because you're dropping a bunch of bangers and some really incredible frameworks. If people want to read more about, if you can go through your list of books, but where can they find them? And if they want to know more about you or communicate with you and or follow you on socials, where do they go?
So pitchology.ai, PitchologY.ai, trademarked, of course, is my website. You can visit my clone who's on there. It's got links to my books, but if you were to go to Amazon and just type out my name, Steve Distante, it's like distant with an E on the end. All my 3 books will come out. I've also done documentary films and so on. And on Pitchology.ai, it's got links to all of that. And in social media, same thing. You'll see it all right there. And reach out, talk to my clone. I actually get reports from my clone every day if there's things that I need to do. And then I have somebody who reviews that and then brings me up to speed. So that kind of like is a big part of my life, my clone right now. And people usually freak out, especially my adult children. They're like, oh my God, that is you. I only talk about entrepreneurship. The truth is, they usually don't talk about entrepreneurship, but it turns into a whole bunch of different ways in my life, fishing and flying and farming and all the things that we're doing. So find me on Pitchology.ai. Of course, I've got LinkedIn and all that other jazz, but I think Pitchology is probably going to be the most satisfactory experience for people.
That's fantastic. One of the things I like to do, as you know, I know you and I were talking before, just that listening to other podcasts, I like to have our guests give the last ripple, the last thought, the last word, the last piece of sage advice. What do you want our audience to leave this conversation with, Steve?
I think we need to give without expecting anything in return. The universe has a funny way of being generous in ways that we never could imagine. And so a lot of times I see people looking for that plus and minus. And the reality is you have much greater gains when you give generously to others, be it your time, your wisdom, your resources. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing for me, is being generous with the people who deserve your time. It's not everybody. You need to have people who maybe fit a certain criteria of things. And that doesn't mean they have to be a wildly successful entrepreneur, but you can see the drive in them and that they're going to do something with it.
Well, Steve, thank you for being here. And thank you for sharing your many travels through the entrepreneur world.
Entrepreneur land. Let's get this right.
Yeah, entrepreneur land, TM. Yeah, trademark. But truly, I've enjoyed this, and I think that our audience is really going to take a lot from today. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ben. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. A big thanks to Elation Lab for the production and creative design. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Keep listening for more MaxLife.